Welcome to In the Black, the podcast that shines a light on resilience, transformation, and the power of reinvention. I'm Araceli, and each week, my co-host Shannon and I sit down with incredible women who face some of life's hardest challenges, from personal setbacks to societal obstacles, and have emerged on the other side stronger, driven, and ready to make a difference.
On In the Black, we celebrate these stories of strength and success, diving deep into the journeys of women who turned pain into purpose, adversity into action, and now dedicate themselves to making the world a better place in their own way. They're here to inspire, share hard-earned wisdom, and remind us all, no matter how dark things may seem, life is cyclical and dawn is coming. So whether you're looking for inspiration, motivation, or just a reminder that change is always possible, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to In the Black.
Laura Nelson is the founder of Sober Life Rocks, a movement born from her powerful personal transformation after choosing sobriety in 2020. What began as an individual journey toward healing and self-discovery soon revealed a larger need: spaces where people who don't drink can feel seen, connected, and empowered. Laura has since turned her experience into advocacy, creating sober, inclusive events and workplace initiatives that foster mental and emotional well-being. Through her work as an entrepreneur and speaker, Laura shares the raw, honest truth about what it means to start over, confront internal struggles, and find strength in vulnerability. Her mission is to normalize sober living, redefine social connection, and show others that even our darkest moments can lead to extraordinary purposes. Welcome, Laura, to our podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We are so glad to have you on here today. Really quickly, can you just tell us a little bit about where you are in your life right now and what you're doing, and just some basics as far as who you are so our listeners can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently in San Diego, California. I am in the dental industry in my day job. So I'm a speaker. I teach customer service and systems to teams. And I have two children, did the whole suburban life, grew, mommy culture, kind of wine culture thing. Found myself in a transition of life, not expecting in, 10-ish years ago, separated and kind of figuring out the next direction of my life, and was struggling with my relationship with alcohol, which leads me to, in 2020, I decided to stop drinking. We can get into what that looked like at that point, but kind of did it for a personal decision. I did it right before the pandemic when I stopped drinking. The world seemed to be popping bottles at 5 o'clock and at 8 in the morning, right? But then got back on the road after the pandemic and saw how much of our culture and evening events were, I already knew it, but I was part of it before, and now I'm not, of rolling up the black bars and standing around and networking and drinking at business events. And so that's really where Sober Life Rocks started. I've recently wrote a book called The Inclusive Event Planner to help meeting planners and event planners recognize that there's a percentage of people in your audience that either don't come or do come but don't want to drink, and then they go back to their rooms early and they're missing the evening events and the networking part of it. And so that's kind of where I am now. I'm a speaker in the day job, and I do this as my passion project.
I love that so much. I know that I am friends with many sober people, and I tend to not drink very much. So it's really fun to see more and more mocktails and non-alcoholic drinks popping up everywhere. So that's been pretty fun to watch, because I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you didn't see that ever. And I remember every time my friends would say, "Hey, you want to go out? Hey, you want to go out?" And I'm like, and then I don't know, I don't really like alcohol. There's only a few. I'm a whiskey girl, so I'll drink whiskey, but I don't really like any other alcohol. And so when I go to places that have like beer or whatever, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not drinking that.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to have that.
The you kind of touch on it. The thing is especially now in the restaurants and bars and stuff, there's better options, and
Mm.
you can choose in your personal life where you go, who you hang out with, what you do. But a lot of times in your business life, you don't get that choice. You have to go to the wine dinner, you have to go to the networking event. And so I'm excited that there are. I mean, I always joke around. You can have adult beverages without alcohol. Like, give me a nice drink. Don't give me some, Capri Sun sippy cup. Give me a real drink. I just don't want alcohol in mine. But you don't have that option a lot of times at business events and things that are more convention event space, which is really where we're trying to put a little pressure and a little attention on.
I love that so much. So let's go back to before 2020. Can you kind of paint a picture of what your life looked like before you chose sobriety and kind of what you were struggling with and what led to those choices?
Yeah. So, like I said, I found myself, my kids were young adults. So they were out kind of starting their lives. I was no longer married, and kind of by myself, and realizing that much of my best friends were wine, beer, mimosas, whatever, to kind of get through the transition of life. I'm a speaker, so I'm on the plane a lot. I'm at airports a lot. I'm going to the networking events. You walk into the hotel and people are like, "Come to the bar," and so I drank before, and I would do the 30-day dry challenge, and I would do the different things, but I didn't really feel like I had such an issue. But I grew up kind of being told by my dad, "Be careful, we have alcoholism in our family. Be careful, there's alcoholics in our family." And that's cool, but everybody in my family drank. So I'm like, well, if that's the case, everybody must have control over it. But I was getting to the point where I didn't feel like I did, right? Where I went to dinner, who I hung out with, all of those things, alcohol was usually part of the equation. I would stay up and party or network, quote unquote, and then wake up the next morning and regret that I stayed up for one extra glass of wine, and had to balance speaking and how much I drank the night before. And so it just got to a point in my life where it was part of so much of my brain space. And I got up one morning at a hotel. I was going to the gym and I wanted to watch something motivational to wake me up. And I'm at the gym and I come across a TED Talk. It's called Gray Area Drinker. And in that TED Talk, she talks about me, where it's like, I felt like an alcoholic was somebody on the side of the road in a brown bag drinking out of a bottle. I was, functioning. I had a career. I'm a speaker, but I just had this dilemma in my head. And that TED Talk was the start of my journey to sobriety because it related to me. I happened to see that day also a speaker on stage who's in my industry who had just stopped drinking also. And when I heard her story, I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And literally came home that night and was like, I couldn't, it was so much energy for me to decide when to drink, not to drink, how much, what am I doing in the morning, all of that, that I'm kind of an all in or all out person. Right. And so it was like, it was taking too much space. And so I woke up and said, I need to do something about this. I need to stop drinking. And then I got lucky enough to read a book called This Naked Mind, which changed my perspective from I can't drink to I choose not to drink. And there's a whole bunch we could talk about that, but I've really get to the point now where I don't feel like I can't drink. I just make the decision not to drink because it doesn't serve me anymore. I did that and it was fun, great, but it's not part of my life anymore.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm just curious, have you seen any of Dr. Daniel Amen's studies on the brain and how alcohol impacts the brain?
100%. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating.
Yeah. And there's so many things coming out now, which is, we used to think like some wine was good for you, some alcohol, like some, and you were mentioning this earlier, kind of jokingly. I mean, we know it's poison. It's not good for you. If you choose to do it, that's fine. It's informed consent. Like, what you're doing. Just like smoking. Do you remember like 30 years ago, smoking was everywhere? Smoking's not gone. Cigarettes are still around, but people are very informed when they smoke what they're doing. And it's just, that's where we are right now when it comes to alcohol. I think we're waking up to the fact that alcohol is not necessarily good for us the way we've been trying to justify it. And how is it serving you in your life?
That's a great point. I love that you compared the two together because, back in the day, it was good for you. I mean, if you see the old the beautiful old posters. I just think they're fascinating, the antique ones, where they're like it's healthy for you. And the same with alcohol. It's it's a serving of blah blah blah, and it's so good for you, antioxidants. And now the studies are coming out where no, there's no benefits. Actually, eating fruit outweighs the benefits that you would get from alcohol, but you don't get any benefits from that.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's I'm curious to see in about 50 years if that's also going to be, I don't want to say a dying thing, but
Yeah.
also looked at the same way as cigarettes are looked at for the majority
It's
of the
I
population.
just heard somebody yesterday talk about this, and I didn't realize this, but cigarettes used to be advertised as a diet solution. I didn't know that, right? And now we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, they were pushing it as something that was good for you, right? And that's the same with alcohol. And alcohol's not going to go anywhere. Like it's always going to be here. But the biggest thing right now, and you just brought this up, if you look at advertising with alcohol, it makes you think you're going to be sexy and rich and famous and you're going to have the hot guy and the good car. And so this is all in our subconscious of like alcohol is here as our best friend. But alcohol is not. I mean, there are purposes for alcohol. People use it for different reasons, but it's an addictive substance. It is meant to get you addicted to it. And when you get addicted and how you drink it and why you drink it, that's individual for everyone and it's a self-diagnosed disease. And so that's part of the struggle is there's lots of people who are like, do I have a problem or not? Am I drinking too much or not? Should I cut back or not? This is why this sober curious movement and talking about all the things is important because you can feel very alone many times in those thought processes.
I love it. Early sobriety can be isolating and raw. What were those first weeks or months like for you? And how did you stay grounded during that time?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part about assessing your relationship with alcohol and then giving up alcohol is because it is so much in your head and it is isolating. Um, so much of you feel so much of society around you is drinking and that you're making a choice against what the societal norm is. And it is an addictive substance. So if you are drinking alcohol, your body is getting addicted to it, and so you have to get past those day ones, day 10, day 100, right? To get because it's a true thing. I kind of joke about this, but like I said, I'm in the dental industry in my day job, and I didn't tell anyone in my day job because I just really didn't want people to know. But what I did is I went over onto TikTok and I started a TikTok channel. I started following, I mean, community is important when you first are sober. So I started following other influencers, people who are talking about sobriety, getting tips and tricks like how do you go to a concert sober? How do you say no thank you when somebody's pushing alcohol on you? Like you got to learn how to do life. I read a lot of books. I got educated. Because part of what we know now with our brain is you can retrain your subconscious on how you feel about something or how you and so I basically was retraining my subconscious during those first 30, 60, 90 days of alcohol and how it plays into my life and how it doesn't serve me and all of the different things. And so I really started kind of talking about it from day one because mostly for if somebody else was going to be a day one after me, but then also because I didn't want to go through day one again. Like I used to smoke in college and I remember quitting smoking and how hard it was to quit smoking. And I never want to smoke a cigarette again because I don't want to go through day one again. I don't want to drink again because I don't want to go through that. It was hard in the beginning, right? And so it's easier to get through a craving now than to actually give into the craving because you'll still have cravings. I'll see a glass of wine and I'm like, oh, that looks amazing. And that would be awesome. But I also know what's going to happen if I drink that glass of wine for me and it's not going to be what I want. So there was a lot of, and again, the world shut down 2 months after I quit drinking. So I literally got lots of time handed to us, right? To read and learn and grow, become knowledgeable in this area.
I love that. I think that knowledge is power. And it's interesting. You talked about retraining your mindset. And so obviously, I do neuro linguistic programming, which is like reprogramming the neural pathways in your brain. And
Mhm.
I find it amazing how many different ways people find to do that. But community is a huge, huge factor
Yep.
in making sure that you can make those changes stick. And
Yep.
so I love that that was the first thing that you did is you sought out community and you were like, okay, I have to do this. And so I think that's really awesome. And then of course you said that tools. I don't know if there's a possibility of us getting a list of books from you after this
For sure.
that we might be able to put somewhere or something like that. But I think it's awesome that you really utilized the tools in order to help reprogram your mind.
Yep.
Um, you talk about how social spaces can feel excluding for people who don't drink. What was your experience with that, and how did it lead you to create Sober Life Rocks?
So when I first started going out to events after I had stopped drinking, I like I said, I'm a speaker, I'm extroverted. I love to go to these events and network and stuff in the evening. And they'd roll up the black bar and everyone starts drinking. And I didn't have a problem of not ordering alcohol. Like I don't care if somebody, I mean, why aren't you drinking? Are you in recovery? Are you pregnant? I'm like, why are you asking me things? They're so inappropriate, right? So it didn't bother me. But what was bothering me was after about one or two drinks in for everybody, it kind of got sloppy and the conversations weren't as good and the networking wasn't as good. And so I would go back to my room and I usually would go make a TikTok video because I was like, and I'm thinking, what's the point of coming to these events and then going back to my room early, right? And then I passed somebody once in the hallway of a hotel, and I had gone down to get some ice cream because if I'm not drinking my alcohol, I can have a little ice cream to splurge. That was one of my ways to get through the early days. And he passed me and he said, he was in my industry, and he said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, you're part of my sober journey. I've been following you on TikTok." And my heart dropped into my gut, like my stomach, and I was like, because I'm like, oh no, somebody knows. And then I was like, that's part of the problem. Like, why do I care if somebody knows? This guy just told me I'm part of his sober journey, and we sat down and talked for 2 hours. I've known this gentleman for years. It was the best networking I've ever done because we had real conversations. We both remembered it the next day. There wasn't anything said inappropriately. So that was kind of where the seed started for Sober Life Rocks. And then I was at an event, and the meeting planner, it was a women's event. There was 125 women in the room. And the meeting planner asked me to be on a mind body health panel because she knew of my sobriety. And so I was on the panel, and I mentioned while I was there, I asked, how many people in here consider themselves sober, soberish, or sober curious? And like 15% of the room of the women raised their hand, but they raised their hand very hesitantly, and they looked over their shoulder because they didn't know who else was raising their hand. And that my business partner was in the room at the time, and my business partner at the time was 17 years sober. And I knew she was sober, she knew I was sober, but we looked around and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of women in here who are not drinking for whatever reason, but we don't know about each other. And so that's really where we kind of got the idea of Sober Life Rocks. We're like, if people just knew there were more people in the room who weren't drinking. And then the meeting planner came to me and said, the one who was throwing the event, she said, I never even thought to have better options at the bar. She said, all I have is beer and wine and water at my house. She's like, I'm not even serving almost a quarter of the people. What should I get? I'm like, okay, great. Let's get some Pellegrinos. Let's get some, but literally that was where this kind of started because this is a personal journey, but it can feel very alone. And with Sober Life Rocks, what we're trying to do is get the event space and the meeting planners to do better, but also have people realize when you walk in the room, you're not alone. And if I know there's just one other person in the room not drinking, I no longer feel alone. And we want to get to the point where people don't care what's in your cup. Have whiskey. I don't care. I don't care that I'm having Pellegrino. That's cool. Enjoy and drink what you want to drink. It's your decision. But what we've done so far, this is the way we've always done it, is throw a lime in our cup, act like we're drinking because we don't want the pressure. Well, then everybody thinks everybody's drinking. So then you feel so alone. And we're just trying to change that paradigm so it doesn't feel that way for people who choose not to drink and to have better options for those that are there.
I had never thought of that, but I have literally done that so many times where I'm like, hey, can I have a soda water and can you put a lime on it?
Uh-huh.
Just so that it looks like I'm drinking what everybody else is drinking.
Exactly.
And I guess I never I don't know, that was just part of my journey. And I was, you want to fit in, so you don't want to look like you're not drinking.
Right? But if we could just change it so that it's okay not to drink, it really, you don't, I mean, it's so weird. This is societal, right? It's so weird. People don't, if I were to say I stopped doing cocaine, you wouldn't be like, well, why? Are you okay? Are you in, like, what are you, you would be like, oh my God, that's great. Right. But if I
Hmm.
say I stopped drinking, people are like, why? What's wrong? Like, are you, why does it matter? Right? It
Hmm.
shouldn't matter, but we have to bring this to the spotlight so that we can make people who don't want to drink feel you're not alone. And then those that choose to drink, cool, but just don't care. Don't worry about what's in my cup. I won't worry about what's in yours, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
I think it's more common now finding non-alcoholic beverages and drinks and mocktails in the stores. We were actually just talking about that, me and my husband. It was so hard pressed to find. And now that we went in there, we grabbed a couple more. I usually get LaCroix and, just carbonated water, and I have my carbonated machine. But it was fun to find cocktails. There was like a mule, and it was very, very low in sugar. So it wasn't a lot of calories and sugar added to it. So I love finding those things. I think it's become more common than it was 6 months ago, than it was 3 months ago.
For
But
sure in the retail space, like I did the same thing. I was just at a Target yesterday and they had a whole a non-alcohol part, which was great. Where it's not common yet is in the event food and beverage catering space. There, it's still very much run by contracts with big alcohol. This is the way we've always done it. Roll up the black bar, put out the beer and wine, and there's no better options. And so that's where I wrote a book that came out last November to help show meeting and event planners that the meetings need to be more inclusive. And it's not just around what you put at the bar, it's also what do we do in the evening. If we're just rolling up a bar and standing around drinking, that there's got to be more to your events for people to want to come and be involved.
I think you're onto something, and it's amazing to see. So that's super cool. I even noticed it in restaurants too. There's like a mocktail list. I'm like, oh, that's so
Mhm.
cool. Not that I want to be drinking, sugar and stuff and all that good stuff. But like I said, I always throw lemon, not just to look like it's alcohol, but because I love lemon in my water. I
Mhm.
really like room temperature, but I also like a good sparkling water with cucumber and limes and stuff. It's so delicious.
There's a lot. I mean, a really good bartender now, good restaurants, they can make drinks. See, the issue has been a mocktail. Sometimes in the industry, in the sober industry, mocktail has a bad name to it. Like there's a bad connotation. That's because it's been the sticky sweet thing that they pour you out of a spout. Like nobody really, I'm not a kid. I don't want it in a kid's cup. I want an adult beverage. Now there are moctologists and that can make amazing drinks. I was at an event where she made lemon drops. We were at a private event. She was making lemon drops. And I was like, no, thank you. I don't drink. And she's like, well, I'll just make you one without alcohol. I'm like, you can do that? Like, I don't know how to make a lemon drop. She made me this beautiful lemon drop. And the difference was mine had no alcohol. Mine had an orange slice on the edge of the glass, and everybody else had a lemon on the slice. And so that way I knew that my glass didn't have alcohol. So as we were walking around setting drinks down, I knew that mine just was the different, but I felt like everyone else. I'm like, look at me. I'm at the big kids table. I'm drinking myself a lemon drop. So you can easily do that. We just haven't.
I went to a party in San Francisco, I don't know, March, I think. And it was amazing because it was a sober party. And I didn't expect that at all. I was just invited to this birthday party, right? And they had the best mixologist, moctologist, I don't know what you called it, but, and they had amazing drinks that you would never guess. I mean, they were beautiful and they were flavorful. And I was
Yeah.
so impressed. And I was like, we should do this everywhere. This is amazing. And they had like vitamins in them, and you could pick different things to go in them. And it was amazing. I'm,
There's a whole movement now with alcohol-free drinks that have, and this is not my forte, so don't quote me on this. I'm probably going to mess it up, but they have like the aptogens and the certain herbs and the things that give you, because there are reasons that we use alcohol, right? For relaxation or for calming or whatever. You can get some of those effects from other things. It doesn't have to be alcohol, but people who are in the sober space now are testing and trying new things to help get still great results from your drink. It just doesn't have to be from alcohol.
Yeah, that's how this was. They had
Yep.
like mushrooms in some of
Right.
them and different things for different flowers that would help with being calm or that sort of thing. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yep.
So, back to the questions. How has building a sober, inclusive community shifted your life personally and professionally? What have you learned about connection through this work?
Great question, actually. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be doing podcast interviews about this being sober, I would have laughed at you. I was the IPA queen. I could tell you every brewery in San Diego. Like, so, so there's been a few things. So first, it's literally this to be a poster child of another group, meaning there's lots of sober coaches and groups and everything. And I have within Sober Life Rocks, we have people who are in recovery, people who don't want to talk about, to let a lot of people know of their sober choices or their early sober or whatever. And I had someone who said, well, I don't want to be the poster child of Sober Life Rocks. And I was like, don't worry, I already am. So it's kind of put me out there just to not represent me, but so many people who are sober curious or maybe just choose not to drink at work events or whatever. So there's that. I've met some amazing people. My business partner and I now have talked to so many podcasters and speakers and writers in the sober space. And everyone, first of all, is amazing because all of these people have overcome a societal norm of everyone drinks, right? And a lot of times when you put down the bottle for whatever reason, there's also a lot of self work that you have to do. There's a lot of like, what did I use alcohol for, right? How do I handle drama or stress or walk into a networking event? And so a lot of the people in this space are amazing humans because they've done a lot of work on themselves. And so that has given us a new connection. And then the other thing that we have found is a lot of people in the sober space, it's not like this is their career. Their careers are other things. They're therapists, they're trainers, they're speakers like I am or whatever. But now they're in the sober space. And so we have a lot of people who are trying to make a difference in this space, but also have day jobs and this is their passion. And when you're dealing with people who this is your passion, it's a whole different than I'm getting paid for a job. I mean, most of the alcohol-free brands are bootstrapping it, just like we are. Like we're just, I published my own book, those kind of a thing. So when you have passion behind it, I think that there's just this energy that's different than a coworker that's getting paid to do a job, right? And so it's really opened up my eyes to a whole new community that I never even knew existed before 2020.
It's beautiful. I think having passion for something, that's one of the big factors that we find in the guests that we have on this podcast is they are very passionate about what they do, whether it's outside their job or whether they've made it into their job. That's something that we see over and over again is that it is a huge passion. And I definitely appreciate that you are making space in the world for people who don't necessarily want to be in that cultural norm,
Right. Right.
So I'm just curious, how has building a sober, inclusive community shifted your own life, personally, professionally?
We are actually writing a book. Every time I write a book, I wrote 2 books in the dental space, which was, business books. And I swear I'd never write a book again. Like I was like, this writing a book for anybody who writes books. I mean, it's way more than you have this idea in your brain, but actually getting it out is a whole different thing. But writing the book has opened up doors that I didn't expect to open. I was just recently, I was invited to speak at a marketing summit in Vegas, which I would have never thought I could speak at. And I think looking back now on your trajectory of your career, I mean, being a speaker, being in events like on a regular basis, like I can see what meeting planners go through, what it's like to be a speaker, what it's like to be an attendee, what it's like to go to these events. And so I put all of that experience plus what it's like to drink and then not drink into a book that I can deliver. So I think it's the 20 plus years of this career all encompassed into one. So that has helped. I'm hoping to be able to be on more stages. And then my business partner and I have decided to host our own conference. So we have found that there's a lot of conferences and events and groups around sobriety, but there's not one focused on the people in the sober space, like the influencers and the speakers and the writers. And like I said, this is their passion project. You know, they have real jobs or had real jobs. And so what we want to do is bring everybody together under one room or under one roof to help them grow in their sober careers, whatever that looks like. Maybe they're a speaker and they want to be a writer. Maybe they're a podcaster and they want to be a speaker. But also then to collaborate across. There's a lot of people who know groups of people, but there's now hundreds of thousands of sober influencers that if we actually came together, we could have more of an impact. And so my career has kind of pivoted in the sense of I'm still doing my day job, but also now we're throwing our first conference, which we were just joking. It's either going to be like, great, that was check a box, we did it, never do that again, or it's going to become a thing. And that's really what we hope, is that the energy that comes out of this turns this into an annual conference or regional or something. We don't know what's going to come of it. First, we got to fill the first one. So that's really where my career has kind of pivoted towards, now I'm an event planner.
I love that. How do you balance working full time? And then where do you find the time to put on all these events?
Well, it's twofold question. I think that if I look back, the amount of energy I spent with alcohol, in time, you actually get a lot of time back in your life that you didn't even realize, right? And not necessarily that I was sitting around drinking all day, but like I'm wake up in the morning rested. I sleep better. I have more energy from the beginning of the day. So I think that the time that I would have before spent and like, recovering from alcohol or around alcohol, I have more time to do other things. I think the other thing too is being an entrepreneur, being already a speaker. I know how to build businesses. I have a business that I sold. And so I'm doing this with regards to like getting executive assistants and social media people and all of the things I've learned from my past experiences, how to apply it into this. And I work a lot of hours because it is a passion project. So there's a little bit of that probably too, but I love what I do and everyone that we talk to. So it doesn't feel like work when you're doing something that you love.
Shannon and I talk about that all the time. I'm like, man, this turned into this passion project, which is our podcast and sharing stories of everyone. It's just so fun to talk to so many different people. And, even the editing part, it just takes so long, but it's so peaceful and so much joy doing it that it doesn't feel like work, but it's so much work, everything that you're putting into it. So yeah, it's so amazing that you're doing that. So for someone listening who's in the thick of their own struggle, what's something you wish someone had told you when you were at your lowest?
Well, and I was going to recognize you guys for the podcast with this too, because you guys are bringing people with their stories and their passion, and you're bringing it out for others to hear. A lot of times when we're in our own struggle, we think we're the only ones. We think it's just us, and you're not. There's other people. There's people who've gone ahead of you, who've gotten through it. There are people who are in it like you are. And so I wish I would have acknowledged it sooner by talking to somebody, whether it's a therapist or a friend or my spouse or somebody, because you feel so alone in whatever you're thinking. It could be alcohol, it could be depression, it could be whatever. You're not alone. Somebody's going through it or has gone through it. And then that's really where community, I think, comes into play, of just knowing that there's maybe your community is one or two, or maybe it's 200, but listening to stories like you guys are sharing, I'm hoping somebody hears my story and they from here go watch the Gray Area Drinker TED Talk, and then they go, oh my gosh, that's me, and they read the book This Naked Mind, and they're like, and then one day they come up to me and say, because of your podcast, I went down this path. And so just know that, somebody else has been through your struggle and has gotten through it, and you may not feel that, but connecting and listening and learning and growing helps to see that there is light. There is a way to get through it.
So I absolutely love that you have such a purpose and such a passion with this. And now that you're using your story to shine this light for other people, what does success or freedom or being in the black look like for you today? And what's next for Sober Life Rocks?
I ultimately, for me, what I would love to do is be on more stages, because I do get energy. I thrive from speaking. And I think that I'm trying to get the meeting planners and event planners to realize that we need to get better about our events. But I also think that if we can get audiences and people listening and understanding that we all have skeletons in our closet. We all have dark spaces. We all have times in our life where, and so the fact that we can embrace that for other people, allow them to have their space, allow them the freedom to realize like it's okay. We are here for you. We're here to support you, and not. We tend to go to work. We tend to go to these cultural things and almost make people feel wrong for not drinking or feeling the way they feel, or we pacify it, or I know I was guilty of it. If somebody was upset about something, I used to try to make them laugh, and instead of letting them just be sad or letting them cry, right? And so I think as humans we can learn how to be better and more compassionate, for others, for whatever. And your issue listening to this may not be alcohol. That's fine, that was mine. But your issue might be something else, right? I remember when I was going through divorce, I never thought I would be divorced. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I realized there's a whole bunch of people who are super successful who are on their second marriage. And I'm like, I had no idea, right? Because I never thought I would be in that part of that issue in my life. So for me, success would be on the stage. And then to have our conference is called Amplify Sober Voices. And I really would love it to turn into something that becomes bigger. So we're hopeful that we're still 8 months out, and we've got such a momentum going that we're really hoping that when we walk out of that, it is exactly what I'm feeling in my heart and turns into something bigger than this. So that hopefully is what the next step is for Sober Life Rocks.
I love that. How long ago did you start?
We started Sober Life Rocks in November of 2023, so a year and a half ago. And then I wrote my book it came out in November 2024. So it's just been over a year. And then Amplify Sober Voices, our conference, is in January of 2026. And you guys should actually come, because it's not just Amplify Sober Voices, it's actually part of PodFest. And PodFest is the largest international podcaster conference. And within PodFest, they do industry days. And so there's a military day and a dental day. And then we're going to have our conference within their conference. But when you come to ours, you get access to the entire PodFest. So, and it's a great conference for podcasters. And I'm not a podcaster, but I want to be a TED Talk speaker one day. And they had someone teaching TED Talks. And there's just a lot of cool collaboration and energy at their conference. But anybody listening, if you want to check it out, our tickets go up in price ever. Our next jump is like sometime in June. But you get access. Our tickets are less expensive than theirs right now because we're trying to get early bird specials. But you get access to the entire event. So if you want to kind of skirt around their price, come buy a ticket from ours, and then you get access to the whole PodFest.
That's amazing. Where can our listeners find you?
So you can find everything on Sober Life Rocks. My book is on there, The Inclusive Event Planner, free download if you want to download it, share it to event planners or conferences you're going to. You can also purchase it on Amazon. Amplify Sober Voices is also on there. There's a link. You can buy tickets to that. And then one other thing that I didn't talk about, just to put in here, is if you are in the sober curious sober space and you're professional on LinkedIn, you don't have to be professional, but if you're on LinkedIn, we have the largest group of professionals on LinkedIn. So if you search Sober Life Rocks community, it's a group within LinkedIn. And in there, we have people in the sober space. We have coaches, we have event planners, meeting planners, HR, and we're really growing this discussion around sobriety and sober choices on LinkedIn. So if you hang out on LinkedIn, don't just follow us, but look for the community and join our community.
I love it. Is there anything else you want to share, want us to ask you that we didn't get to?
Where is Amplify and when is it? It's January 15th, 2026, and it's in Orlando, Florida, at the Renaissance at SeaWorld. So all that's in there too. So, but you guys have to come to PodFest. It's a great conference. And trust me, I analyze conferences all the time on like their inclusivity, and it's a lot of fun, great networking. They have great big personalities, international podcasters come. So it's a great event.
Awesome. I am very excited about it. So
Thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
I just really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you using your passion and really choosing to make a difference in the world and to create a space for people. I think that's what it's all about, is just allowing people to be themselves and to be authentic. And I love that you are embodying that. And I think it's just beautiful. So I'm very glad that I got to meet you today.
Well, thank you. And I hope to get to meet you guys in person in January.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of In the Black. I hope today's story left you feeling inspired and reminded of the incredible strength that lies in each of us. Our guest today has taken her toughest challenges and transformed them into something beautiful, reminding us all that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way to find light in the world.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and share In the Black with another woman who could use a little encouragement. Together, we're building a community of passion, purpose, and power. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and remember, your story matters. Your choices change things, and being your most authentic self can and will change the world around you.